Let's dive right into this explainer and explore the absolutely fascinating 18th century. Seriously, this is the period that laid the foundation for modern prose, journalism, and the novel as we know it today. If you've ever wondered how society made the leap from rigid, absolute kingdoms to an era of constitutional law, coffeehouse debates, and the very first English novels, well, you are in the right place. Let's get into it. Here's a quick look at our agenda. We're going to start with the restoration of the monarchy, move through a bloodless shift in power, explore the dawn of the Enlightenment, check out those famous coffeehouses, and finish up with the birth of the English novel. Starting with Section 1, the restoration of monarchy, or as it's perfectly subtitled here, the return of the king. To give us a roadmap, this timeline lays out the overarching neoclassical age we'll be discussing. We kick things off in 1660 with the Restoration Age, which runs until 1700. Then we flow right into the Augustan Age from 1700 to 1750. And finally, we wrap up the century with the Age of Johnson, spanning 1750 to 1798. It's a really clear, linear progression of a society that is rapidly evolving.
Now, what's really interesting here is the massive cultural whiplash that happened right at the start. Just look at this high contrast shift. You've got the strict, rigid rules of Puritanism under Oliver Cromwell on one side. We're talking closed theaters and zero entertainment. But then King Charles II comes back and boom, the Restoration Society explodes into existence. Suddenly, society is pleasure-loving, fashionable, and absolutely brimming with wit and humor.
That 1660 event was literally dubbed the Return of the King, and it brought immense joy to the people. You can see it right there in the definition on this educational cheat sheet. This was a society letting out a huge collective exhale, completely ready to celebrate city life and the joys of simply existing again.
Moving on to Section 2, a bloodless shift in power, the Glorious Revolution of 1688. So let's look at how this builds into an entirely new political structure. King James II tries to rule absolutely, but the public isn't having it, and he ends up fleeing. Parliament steps in and cleverly invites William III and Mary II to become joint rulers. And the craziest part of all this massive shift in national power happened entirely peacefully, no bloodshed whatsoever. By limiting the king's power, they established a constitutional monarchy, promoted religious tolerance, and paved the way for real political stability. That stability brings us to Section 3. The dawn of the Enlightenment, the age of reason and science.
With that stable political foundation finally in place, society basically experienced a massive philosophical awakening. A great memory trick for understanding this neoclassical mindset is the acronym ROSE, which perfectly sums up a society craving reason, order, satire, and elegance. After years of political chaos, people didn't want emotion. They desperately wanted order, intellect, and well-structured logical rules. And this era was driven by some absolute heavy hitters. I mean, look at this list. Over in England, John Locke is championing his theory of knowledge and natural rights, while Isaac Newton is literally writing the scientific laws of nature. Across the channel in France, you've got Voltaire advocating for freedom of thought, and Rousseau pushing his social contract theory. The universal belief here was that society could and would progress through human knowledge. But as reason and logic took over, writers developed a really sharp new weapon to keep society in check: satire. This wasn't just cracking jokes. This was a highly intellectual method of using humor, irony, and ridicule to directly criticize human vices and social evils. Writers basically used this comedic roasting as a moral tool. Their ultimate goal? Exposing hypocrisy and getting people to actually think through laughter. You had Jonathan Swift taking aim at massive targets like politics, science, and the flaws of human nature itself. Meanwhile, Alexander Pope went straight after society's fools and literary critics. They were using those ROSE ideals, specifically reason and elegance, to brutally but beautifully expose corruption. Which leads us to Section 4, coffeehouses and periodicals, the hub of intellectual debate. So, as the middle class becomes more educated, they naturally want a place to hang out and argue about all these new ideas. Enter the coffeehouse. This was essentially the 18th century equivalent of a social media comment section, but with actual coffee and arguably better manners. Writers and intellectuals gathered here constantly, and because there was this sudden massive hunger for discussion and debate, it spurred a huge need for printed essays, newspapers, and magazines. People didn't just want fluff, they wanted useful, informative content.
This demand completely birthed modern journalism. Check out this table. It's a who's who of early publishing. Richard Steele founds The Tatler to discuss manners. Then he teams up with Joseph Addison to launch The Spectator, which was specifically designed to improve public taste and promote virtue. Addison follows up with The Guardian, and Samuel Johnson gives us The Rambler. These were serious, well-crafted publications trying to shape the moral compass of an entire nation. And this brings us to a massive, game-changing realization. Prose became more important than poetry. Think about it. When your goal is to debate social contract theory, critique the government, or explain scientific laws, flowery poetry just doesn't cut it anymore. You need clear, straightforward, logical prose. All of which sets the stage for Section 5, the birth of the English novel, a brand new form of entertainment. All those societal dominoes we've been tracking, they fall perfectly into place right here. Let's look at the exact recipe for the novel. Step 1. The middle class grows, becoming the main reading demographic. Step 2. Literacy increases across the board. Step 3. The printing press makes producing texts significantly cheaper. And finally, Step 4. This massive new audience demands stories that reflect real life, blending pure entertainment with the moral lessons they were already getting from their coffeehouse magazines. This perfect storm paved the way for what is basically the Mount Rushmore of early English novelists. Daniel Defoe gives us Robinson Crusoe and becomes the father of the English novel. Jonathan Swift delivers biting political allegory with Gulliver's Travels. Samuel Richardson writes Pamela, focusing on manners and morality. And Henry Fielding brings realism and humor to the table with Tom Jones. Together, they built the exact framework of long-form fictional storytelling that we still binge-read today. So we've seen how political reform, rising literacy, and the dawn of reason literally built the modern media landscape from the ground up. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to ponder. If the printing press and coffeehouse debates gave us the novel, how will our current digital revolution and instant global connectivity shape the stories of tomorrow? It is incredible to think that our modern thirst for knowledge is a direct descendant of this exact era. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep exploring.